Welcome, listeners. I'm Davine Dial, a general manager at WPVM 1037 in Asheville, North Carolina. For the Pacifica Network and WPVM, today I am interviewing Justice Bob Orr, who served on the North Carolina Supreme Court for over 10 years, and Jennifer Roberts, the former mayor of Charlotte, North Carolina. Justice Orr and Jennifer Roberts are part of a bipartisan group of individuals and organizations that formed the North Carolina Network for Fair, Safe, and Secure Elections, a grassroots project initiated by the Carter Center. For decades, the Carter Center has assisted and overseen elections in budding and fragile democracies around the world. Now, the Carter Center sees the dire need to do so in the United States. Welcome, Jennifer Roberts and Justice Orr.
Thanks,
How
David.
did this get started?
Well,
Right.
thanks for having us today. And I guess since the Carter Center reached out to me first, I can give that quick overview. As you mentioned, they have done elections monitoring around the world for decades, literally, and have supported democracies in developing countries. And in 2020, started seeing signs of a lot of concern and distrust in what's going on in our democracy. They reached out to me briefly in 2020, but they really got started in 2021 and got some resources put behind an effort to bring their expertise to the United States in terms of bolstering democratic norms, helping to bring civility and honesty into the process, which has been part of what countries around the world have looked at in the U.S. is that hallmark of democracy, the peaceful transfer of power. And they partnered up with Princeton University in their Bridging Divides initiative to do some data collection to see, where in the United States is the possibility of election disruption or violence most likely to happen, and how can we get ahead of it? How can we build some networks of trusted individuals on both sides of the aisle to help restore the trust and calmness that we've had as we transfer power during our elections. North Carolina is one of the four that they came up with because we've had a history um, of mobilizing. People like to protest, but we also have a important U.S. Senate election. It's gotten some national attention, and we do have a history of some violent groups. And again, just because we have a history doesn't mean it's going to happen this time. But they chose North Carolina. They reached out to me because of my political experience and connections. And I said, first thing I said is, I've got to have a colleague on the other side of the aisle to work on this with me so we can make sure we have a truly bipartisan effort. And that's when I called Bob, and he said, okay.
Yeah, and frankly, I was concerned enough about the problems we were witnessing with people's lack of confidence in the election system, potential threats to democracy, and so it was a pretty easy yes, I'll do it when Jennifer called on behalf of the Carter Center, and so we've been the co-chairs now in this effort for almost a year, not quite. I guess Jennifer maybe a little longer than me. But in addition to what Jennifer was saying about the concerns of potential disruptions or violence surrounding elections, we also heard pretty early on from election officials about the difficulties they were having, the challenges and the lack of confidence, lack of respect and support they were getting. And so, in addition to a set of candidate principles that Jennifer can talk a little more about, and putting together a network, a bipartisan network here in the state, we came up with this 14 congressional district tour that also included a 15th event, which was a virtual town hall. in which we had election officials from both parties. We had attorneys who represented individuals from both parties or political parties to talk about election laws and the operation of elections. We had a cybersecurity expert. And the idea was to inform and educate the public, answer questions and concerns that they had. And so literally for about the last 6 or 7 weeks, Jennifer and I have been traveling around North Carolina, including a stop in Asheville in the heart of the 11th Congressional District, putting on these town halls.
And so, so if you've done 14, you had a lot of experience. Give us a couple of your most surprising observations of this tour and what you learned on the tour.
Well, I always tell folks one thing we learned is that people really don't trust machines. We actually have now in North Carolina a paper ballot for every vote cast. Some counties only have paper, but some counties have electronic voting machines that are not connected to the internet. But we had almost every stop, people asked, how do you know there's not a modem in there? And what was interesting is that one of the county information officers who was part of our panel, I think it was in Asheville, said that he had gotten together with his elections director to open a machine so he could see with his own eyes that there was no modem in it. That actually, it spoiled the machine. They had to send it back to Raleigh to get recertified and, cleaned, etc. But he wanted to see with his own eyes, and people just don't trust machines. So what we wanted people to know is that in North Carolina, every vote is on a paper ballot. So even if you use a machine, it's printed on paper. You can see how it prints, and that is, what helps make it safe and secure.
So that means that, if there were questions, you actually have that stack of ballots, paper ballots, the hard copies that could be verified.
Absolutely. And the other thing that counties do is they do random audits, and they do that hand-eye count to make sure it does match what the tabulator machine added up. And they do, I think, at least 2 precincts every county, every election. So, a lot of these things that people just don't know and don't think about helped. I think it helped move the needle in terms of people trusting.
Well, I go ahead, Judge Orr.
Well, no, I was going to just add to that the election system, if you think about it, with 7.4 million registered voters in North Carolina, 100 counties with their own individual boards of elections and workers, and it is really a fairly sophisticated and, from a legal standpoint, complicated process, and so. Most of us just take voting for granted, unless you've been a volunteer at the polls or you've worked with a board of elections. I don't think people really understand it. And so there was a lot of misunderstanding and misinformation and confusion. I think about an event in Edenton that we had down east, and this lady was very concerned that she had received 16 absentee ballots. Well, turns out what she had received was 16 applications for absentee ballots. And so there was nothing fraudulent or improper about that. She was only going to get one actual ballot to vote, but the parties and candidates had sent numerous applications, but she was confused about it. And so one of the important things that I learned is there's a lot of misunderstanding or lack of understanding about how the system works. And so the experts, and these people really are experts who serve on boards of elections and as officials, and so they did an excellent job, I think, in getting that information out. And secondly, and it goes along with that, we all know North Carolina is a fast-growing state, and certainly the Asheville metro area is, a huge growth area. And so we're getting a lot of people coming into North Carolina from states that have different election operations. I mean, for example, Florida elects their election supervisors, and the Secretary of State in a number of states, who's an elected individual, is the overseer of the entire election process. Well, that's not the way we do it in North Carolina. We have a bipartisan state board of elections that oversees 100 local boards of elections, all bipartisan, non-elected, and so one of the challenges was talking to people who'd moved here from Arizona, from New Jersey, from Florida, and trying to get them informed and up to speed on it. But in the last point, and then Jennifer, you chime back in on this, we learned that we have an incredibly well-run system, and we heard it from Republican election board members, from Democrat election board members, from attorneys who litigate election cases for the political parties. There was unanimity that, literally from Murphy to Manio, that, we should be very proud of the system of elections here in North Carolina, and people should have confidence that we're going to have fair, safe, and secure elections.
Well, I learned a lot, and I watched the online forum, but I also saw the one in Asheville, and the cybersecurity tech expert that spoke for Buncombe and Henderson County. He was very forthright about the challenges and how it could be better, and the issue of, is it connected to the internet, is key to someone being able to go in and hack the system. And I think that a lot of people might not understand that it's a closed system. It's not an open system where other people can get into it. And then it's exacerbated by what I have observed since around 2014, an organized effort to destroy the credibility of the voting system.
Well, it's interesting about the distrust of machines, because the truth is that there are cyber attacks out there. I
Right.
mean, we've had counties have ransom attacks where they get control of your county data and say, we're not giving it to you unless you pay us. That happens. I mean, those are out there.
Mhm.
And what was interesting, because the chief security information guy for the state board of elections said, yes, there are people who want to mess with our elections, but the
Mhm.
great thing about North Carolina, and even about our national system, is that elections are extremely local. And so that the paper backup in North Carolina, also the fact that when you go to your precinct, you're going to see those workers or your friends and neighbors. They usually recognize you unless you just moved to town. But they are very local. The votes are very local and are kept secure. And so even if somebody hacked into the website, which is, where the final results get put, it doesn't affect the votes because they're all on ballots in different county locations, and they're all, safe and secure. And so if that ever happened, the website was taken down, they could piece back together the actual result. And that is a really important aspect. And, every state is different. And so any kind of national attack would be very, very difficult to carry out across 50 different systems.
Yeah, they also pointed out, and this was important to me, that while somebody might be able to hack into a system, they were going to get caught. I mean, it wasn't going to be some secretive, surreptitious process that nobody figured out, that there are all these safeguards built into the system at the local, state, and national level to make sure that even if there is some sort of external cybersecurity threat, that one, we're going to know about it, they're going to get caught, and as Jennifer said, we have these backup capabilities to make sure that the votes are actually counted correctly, even if there is in fact some sort of external threat. But it's a pretty complicated system, and we were fortunate with the cybersecurity experts that we were able to present on this tour, because I think that relieved a lot of folks' concerns.
Well, we did have some ballot stuff happening over in, is it Bladen County with McRae Dowless?
Yeah.
Is there how does that play into how trusted elections can be? Is it because he was caught?
Yeah, I think that was a big part of it, because that's another question that came up in most of our town halls. And the absentee ballots continue to be one of the parts of the system that people are more wary of, because they are, sent through the mail or delivered to the election office. And one of the things that North Carolina requires is 2 signatures on that ballot. And the way that the fraud was caught was that they noticed that one of those signatures was the same on hundreds of ballots. And so, that is the system working. There are eyes on, every time an absentee ballot or a provisional ballot is open, there's a Democrat and a Republican looking at it. And these are the kind of things, these checks and double checks are ways that people do get caught. And there are also human errors in there. We had somebody, one of the counties said that they get information from the social services department when people pass away, and they take those folks off the roll. Well, they said in one election they had a woman show up who they thought had passed away, and there she was standing in front of them. And what they discovered when they did their research, they let her vote a provisional ballot, and they discovered that there was someone with the same exact name and the same exact birth date who had passed away the year before. They discovered it was the different person because the addresses were different, and they put her back in the system. But again, the checks and balances, the provisional ballots, and the way that those ballots are adjudicated, I think really helps people have confidence that it's being done right.
Yeah, and I would add that, while you had the incident several years back in what was then the 9th Congressional District, and there's been a history here in Western North Carolina of some, voting irregularities. One, it's a felony to violate the laws, and it certainly doesn't make much sense for somebody to say, I'm going to try and vote twice, and thus risk being convicted of a felony simply for the benefit of adding one extra vote. And the other thing that I learned in this process is that over the years, we have continued to strengthen the security and safety of our voting systems. And that, in part, it's because of new laws. I mean, the General Assembly strengthened laws against ballot harvesting, which was the issue in the 9th District, but also in the variety of safeguards that are put in place. I will say, though, that our boards of elections consistently are underfunded in their ability to keep up with and understaffed in the context of a fast-growing population, increased voter participation, and technological changes. And we really need, as citizens, to encourage county commissioners and the legislature to increase funding and staffing for our boards of elections, which will only strengthen and improve the system. And so that's a big issue sort of hanging out there that I think the public needs to be aware of and elected officials need to act on.
Well, I videotaped the Trusted Elections Tour, and I shared it on social media, and I got a number of comments that it's all Democrats at the Board of Elections, and you can't trust them.
Well, that's simply not true. There are 5 members on the state board of elections, 5 on the local boards of elections. You have 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats, and then depending on who the governor is, the 5th member and chairman is appointed by the governor. So we have a Democratic governor. So currently the boards are 3 Democrats, 2 Republicans. When Pat McCrory was governor, you had 3 Republicans and 2 Democrats. And so it's simply not an accurate statement to say that they're only Democrats or they're only Republicans, because the boards are by law bipartisan, and the staff is required to be nonpartisan. And so, their interest is putting together a fair, safe, and secure election system for the county they're working in, and not to favor one party over the other. So that's one of the misapprehensions and misconceptions that hopefully the tour helped to diminish, if not eliminate.
Yeah, and we had a Republican and a Democratic election board member at each of our town halls, and what was fun was seeing the exchange between them when they would say, we disagree ideologically on a lot of things, but we hardly ever disagree when we're adjudicating ballots. We are in complete agreement when it comes to working the system to make it safe and secure, and that was really heartening to hear at every stop.
Yeah, I mean, I think people should take great confidence in the way that board members from both parties work together and collaborate on these elections. I mean, it is probably the signature quality of our North Carolina system.
Well, the hallmark of democracy is a peaceful transfer of power, and the United States is the wealthiest country and has been for the past century in the history of the world. And my own opinion about it, why, is the fertile ground that this democracy gives people to create and develop businesses, enterprises, whatever. What's your opinion on why this initiative is even necessary to do?
Well, as I said, the Carter Center started in 2020 because the number of people who were forwarding and reposting misinformation about election security, those numbers just rapidly multiplied. We do know that there were outside, forces helping to multiply those concerns. And as I said, that there have been hackers from Russia, etc. But I think after January 6th, it became very real to people that, and through polling that we've seen in terms of the number of people who think they might have to use violence to maintain their quality of life or to maintain their freedoms, that became concerning. And, in the information age, it's so easy to spread misinformation and disinformation, and it's very easy for conspiracy theories to take hold. And, this was true. I mean, Mark Twain said, a lie gets around the world before the truth can put on its boots. But the difference now is the speed and the amplification that is possible. And that's why we really need, everybody's help in getting the right information out. And it's not just the Carter Center that's doing that. We have, the Baker Institute, the McCain Center. We have, Braver Angels. I mean, there are a lot of groups out there that are trying to bolster democracy in the same way. And that that should give people, a lot of heart that people do care. They love our democracy. They are patriotic, and they want to continue to support those basic norms.
Yeah, I think in this something we've already talked about, but merits re-emphasizing, and that is, I mean, you can't pick up the paper without some story about hacking into a business or bank accounts or social media issues, and technology has exploded so exponentially over the last 10 years, 15 years, that it's hard for people to have faith in the machines, particularly if there are all these stories about um, you know outside forces or people trying to steal your bank account and stuff like that. And then we were in a more partisan, divided era in our country, and some people don't want to admit defeat. It's easier to blame some mysterious fraudulent election system for their loss, as opposed to the fact that as a candidate, their ideas and positions on issues just simply could not garner a majority of the votes. And so it's difficult, and as Jennifer was pointing out, social media amplifies it. So it really is part of this project and part of the Carter Center's long-term efforts to do everything we can to make sure the voting public has accurate information, and to shore up their confidence that their vote counted, and I'm confident it will.
Well, we are in a kind of a perfect storm of unknowns with the internet and the pandemic, the use of the bully pulpit to try to destroy trust in valid elections, and some people are never going to be convinced of what they don't want to believe.
Right. Yeah.
So there's that. But what are the plans for the tour in the future? I'm sure you're going to be very glued to this coming election on November 8th. And what do you think will go with the tour in the future? What plans are there?
Well, let me answer one question about between now and election day, and that is we're working with our network and with the Carter Center to have people in place that if problems crop up, that we can help respond in a positive way to calm the waters, minimize distortion of what's happening or the truth. And so we're still doing a lot of work between now and the election and post-election to everything certified. And Jennifer, you want to talk about going forward?
Sure. And, the great thing about this is that everybody can help. And, we had a great session this morning with our network about misinformation. I always tell my kids this, when you hear something, don't just take it from one source. Investigate, look at the source. What's the motive for the source to put that out? Take some time before you spread something. I mean, we can all be part of that. But we know that North Carolina is just one of many states that we're going to put together a final report. What did we do? How did this impact? What was the result? And from that, and from the other states engaged in this effort, we're going to come up with a game plan for 2024, because there are elections. Actually, we have them every year in North Carolina. We have municipal ones in the odd years, and there's always a need for folks to help get good information out, to help maintain civility, and to really support that democracy that, Devane, you mentioned. We've been looked at around the world. Democracy does help innovation. It helps bring new ideas forward. It helps people know that they can, their opinions are valued, that their voice can be heard. And that does help maintain a healthy society and
Mhm.
a prosperous one.
Mhm.
So that's our hope going forward, that we'll have learned, we'll have a great report, and we can continue to put into practice the things that we know are going to help restore trust. And, that trust is not just in our institutions, but, it's also in our neighbors and our families.
Mhm.
Let's be civil and learn to really support that democracy together.
Well, thank you, Judge Orr and Jennifer Roberts. So thank you both for joining us in this discussion, and we'll keep an eye on the Trusted Elections Tours and see what happens next.
Thanks so much.